Well, a very happy new year to you. We're now in 2022 and it's time for our first Spatial-Next talk of the year. And a number of people have asked me this question, so I'm going to tackle it. What is the future of GIS? Let's break this talk down into three parts. This first one is going to be on yesterday and where we've been. So let's begin. I would say the foundation of where we've been over the last 50 years with GIS is really focused on the value of maps. The emphasis has really been around the world of maps. And in particular, in the recent past, is talking about this notion of where. A number of years ago, Esri, for example, rebranded to the science of where, and there is much conversation now about the value of where. So let's talk about the journey. That journey began, and I remember these days, in the 90s, and before it was really disconnected computer-based technology. And I put desktop on the screen there because when I actually came into GIS in the mid-90s, we had desktop technology, we had software like ArcView. So we were in a disconnected computer environment then, where GIS folks like myself that were trained at college were taught how to use this software, and we applied it at work. Mid to late 90s was when the web appeared, and we started to work with connected computers or a network of computers. So we no longer worked in isolation, and we had these browsers that we started to build applications in, and we had multi-tiered technology. So the world moved on, and the availability of GIS became much more broad. Towards the end of the 2000s, we started to see mobile appear. The first iPhone came out in around 2008, first iPad 2009, 2010. So we had built-in GPS on mobile computers. Again, another giant leap for the industry. In the recent history, we've started to talk about distributed services. So WebGIS is this new term, which confuses a lot of people, but WebGIS really stands for the fact that we can, from a desktop application like ArcGIS Pro, we can connect to services which are remote, which are running in the cloud. We can do the same from a web application. We can do the same from a mobile application. So this notion of distributed services and cloud technology has become a very, very big deal. I would also add to this, and this list could go on, but I think we've seen a dramatic improvement in how we manually collect data. Before we actually had mobile devices, and mobile devices are a big part of this change. Data collection was difficult, digitizing was difficult, but we've now got the ability to collect data on devices, quite accurate data, and information about what that is that we're talking about. So we can gather the GPS location of something and we can actually add information about that. So that's a massive improvement on what we used to have. I would also say that we're expanding the set of map-based outputs. And let me expand on that in the next slide. I'm using expand, that word expand twice. So let's talk about value proposition. I wanted here to just talk about some of the things that we're now doing with maps. We've got the classic map world, the maps we've always seen online. Here's a good example. One of the things that's always intrigued me about, particularly on the web, since I started life as a GIS web developer, is building out these widget-based applications. And we've got some great examples now, Web App Builder in Esri's world, for example, and there are many others where we can actually not only easily bring in data to these web maps, but we can also add functionality and configure that via these widgets. So that's been a big thing. I remember clearly the Flex days when we had the original widget-based viewers there, and now we've got into JavaScript and these newer viewers. So that flexible, configurable web world is great, and the things we can now do are phenomenal. We got dashboards. Many folks have spoken about the COVID dashboard, and again, that was an Esri application. But we've got these dashboards that kind of mirror the BI world, where the map is a central part to things, but we include charts in that map, or in that interface. So some real nice advances there. We got the classic applications where we can do different things. This is an example where we've got a web application and or the same thing on a mobile application. So we can build these applications that run anywhere. And they're amazing things that we're now doing. Technology's moved to such an extent we can do this stuff. I really like these type of maps where we're doing clustering, we're doing heat maps, We're adding all sorts of options into these beautiful interfaces. And behind that, we've got open source data like OpenStreetMap. So those base maps, those vector base maps are far easier to get. That's free data, essentially. So again, major advances. I like this one. This is actually a 𝐏𝐸𝐵 map. They've done some interesting things, 𝐏𝐸𝐵. But they've actually blended here a map with charts, so some really nice things there to actually build out that story, to actually enable us, which is the beauty of a map, to actually see those patterns, drill deeper, get more insight. And then the last and not the least, I really like story maps. Story maps have been around for quite some time, and it's not only Esri that have done story maps. I think they evolved from somewhere else, but these kind of integrations of words, video, imagery with maps are great. I mean, I always find myself when I look at travel sites asking that where question. Well, we've now got the ability to actually reference these places using the map. So a really wonderful combination of things there. So I love the evolution of the map world, and that's really truly the value proposition that we've been with. So let me talk about the industry. I think it's fair to say the industry as of where we've been, and this is a focus on yesterday, but I mean, I really would say it's applicable today and would be applicable tomorrow. But since we're tracing the history of GIS, this is what this video is about. I would summarize where we are as a well-established niche industry, which is characterized by, these are the three things that stand out in my mind. We've historically worked with two-dimensional, static, vector-based location data. We build geodatabases which contain that data. So that's been historically what we've worked with, and primarily still what GIS is focused on. We also have a departmental lock-in. So GIS tends to be within departments that have GIS folks. Usually that's a GIS department or the mapping department. So we're kind of locked into those departments a little bit. And there's good reason why that's actually happened, which we don't need to talk about in this video. We also have a very map-centric approach, and I've got a picture there of layers. We have the classic sort of layer scenario, sort of acetates of data that sit on top of one another. So that's been sort of where we've sat for the longest time, and that's the nature of GIS. But I would summarize where we've been. I mean, we've had major successes in the industry, but I think the biggest single challenge that we now face is moving from a department to an enterprise adoption and use. And when I use the word enterprise, I'm focused on working with enterprises. So it's widening the use to the technology. We could change that enterprise word to be a mainstream, and I think that's what the next two videos will really be talking about. But moving from a narrow niche department focus to the much wider world. And that's really what Spatial-Next is all about. It's really what I talk about is crossing the chasm. And that really is a summary. It's overcoming that challenge and moving it into the mainstream more widely. So that's the first video. I'm Matt Sheehan. You can reach me at matt.sheehan@credigen.com. Social media, @𝐆𝐞𝐨𝐬𝐩𝐚 is how you can find me. I will now be doing a second video, which is a continuation of this one, which talks about today. So thanks for watching.